Fire evacuation procedure for the evening meetings. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening, therefore if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exits are located at the rear and side of this room. Go down the stairs and meet in the War Memorial Park, please. To coin a phrase so you can be ticked off. This meeting will be webcast. To receive apologies for absence, we have been told there is Councillor Tilbury will not be with us this evening, and Councillor Keating won't be with us this evening. However, I'm pleased to say Councillor Potter will be substituting. I hope I'll be pleased to say that. Declarations of conflict or interest or whipping decisions. No. Urgent items, there are none. To confirm the minutes on the 19th of September, and can I thank Councillor Burgess for taking the meeting. I was otherwise laid up, I'm afraid. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Chair, so early in the meeting, but in regard to the minutes of the meeting that you're referring to, and I attended that meeting, there's just one item I wanted to raise. Can I do it at this juncture? No, Chair, it's not incorrect. It's seeking an update on one of the minuted actions. Can I do that? Thank you, Chair. Just under, it's page 9 of 194. It's at the end of the minutes that we have before us. It's paper A. It's in respect of Manidan, and the last paragraph where our resolution, the committee agreed that it would requested an update on the landholding issues before the end of the calendar year, i.e. 2013, and that in order to further safeguard the Council's interest at the Planning and Infrastructure Committee, etc. But more importantly, this updated report that we saw by the end of 2013, I think this is the last meeting of this committee in this calendar year, and I just would like to know what progress has been made on that and when we might expect to see that update.
We will have to check that with the officers, and a written reply will be sent. That's all I can say. If you could have mentioned it before, we could have had an answer. Okay. It will indeed go to all members.
Okay, I mean, can I just be absolutely clear, Chair, if I may? I mean, that won't be a progress report. That actually will give us the update on the landholding issues, will it?
I will check with officers. We will check with officers and let you know. Okay? All members on this committee will let me. Okay. Item 8, members and public participation on issues contained within this agenda. I propose to deal with, we've had one request, I propose to deal with that at the paper. And I will be bringing that paper forward to the beginning. So 15 will go in front of 12, as we have a member of the public here. Standing invitations to relevant portfolio holders, again that will be brought up during the papers of each of the following papers. There's no referrals from other committees or the council. Issues referred by the cabinet, none, which takes us nicely into paper 15 and sorry, get to the paper first. Rita Wareham, you're going to introduce, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Before I introduce this paper, there's just 3 small errors I'd like to bring to your attention. Paragraph 9.5.1, the second bullet point is incorrect and should be ignored and
Can you
deleted.
please use the corner page numbers? That's the 194 or whatever the corner.
Sorry, Chair. Page 184 of 194. Item 9.5.1, the second bullet point should be deleted and ignored. It's an incorrect statement and I apologise for that, Chair. Appendix 2, page 188 of 194. Category A, Barlow's Park, Tadley, should be deleted. It was added to the list in error. It's actually owned, it's not owned by the Borough Council and therefore shouldn't be on this list. And Category B, Taylor's Farm, again should be deleted. It's duplicated by Sherfield Park Community Centre Plainfield. So if you could just make those corrections, that'd be helpful.
And can you note that Southdown is one word, please?
This report relates to a motion which was sent to full council, was made to full council, which seeks to secure protection of the council's parks, green spaces and playing fields. This Ofcom is receiving this motion in its capacity as the relevant Ofcom which covers council-owned land and property issues. The Planning and Infrastructure and Housing and Environment Ofcoms have already commented on this motion. Indeed, as recently as last Thursday, H&E resolved that the council should develop a policy for protection of its green spaces, recommend that option 3 of 6.1 is implemented, recommended that there be one list, recommended that variation of the list be a decision for full council, and that standing orders in the constitution should be amended accordingly, and the officers prepare a report of suggested criteria for consideration by Housing and Environment in January 2014. Chair, this Ofcom is invited to comment on whether the council should develop a policy for protection of its green spaces, the 3 options outlined in 6.1 of the report, and the categories and criteria and exemptions in section 8 of the report. Chair, I have with me colleagues from the council's property team to assist me in answering any questions that the Ofcom has. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Mr. Paul Beavers. Would you like to come forward, please? I think you know the procedure. Two minutes, but I'll be a little bit generous.
Paul Beavers, speaking about Old Down and exceptions, so I'm speaking about the original report and not about the resolution I've just seen. A road across Old Down was not only unrevealed to us, but raised questions about the original planning approach. Over 6 years of community action would not have happened if it had been known that thoughts of a road existed or anything else. Cabinet exercises all the levers of power, and we feel uses them to thwart its own residents and undermine the empowerment it claims it wants to support. Our group is comprised of volunteers who have donated 12 to 14,000 hours of free labour. We're representative of all in our borough who value nature and want people to reconnect with it. The community had to make Old Down special because council does not really understand it and is really rather in denial of its own ignorance. Now the community has acted, council seems to want to take back control. Consider decisions by Cabinet on our community project together with decisions by Cabinet on Saunders Field, Old Common, South View. We feel Cabinet views community-owned land as Cabinet land, not community land, and Cabinet as a land developer, not as a community developer. 1 week ago, Council issued a decision notice on an application for local nature reserve status made 12 months ago. 6 months ago, the officer recommendation was to delay a decision indefinitely. In reality, 1 week ago, different words, same meaning. Cabinet as landowner is refusing to allow LNR status for community land to avoid the risk that the local planning authority recommends refusal of the council's own planning application to build a road across Old Down. That's what we feel. We'd like to make 3 recommendations. The report is about protections, so we ask the committee to recommend open spaces are protected, with final decisions taken by full council on development and on all designations. That Cabinet agrees actions and a tight timetable for delivering LNR status for all of Old Down and Beggar Wood, and not wait for the local plan. Cabinet to state in writing the reasons why after 1 year it has withheld a yes or no decision, and how its present position is compatible with Nolan principles and Council's responsibilities as LPA, or with the Council plan, the GI strategy, living landscapes, the draft local plan, SINC status, the support of Natural England, and above all the interests of residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions? Thank you very much. Right. Have you got anything else to say, officers? Questions to officers. Councillor Potter.
Well, I do in the form of a question to officers, if I may, but through you, Chair. I mean, I'm sure the advice of this committee this evening is going to be far more improved from what I actually experienced by the webcast last week at Housing and Environment. But it does seem to me, I mean, we've got this motion in front of, sorry, this resolution in front of us from Housing and Environment, which covers, I think, the fundamental points after long debate at that committee, which I would have thought this committee would in the main want to adopt this evening. I can't see how another overview and scrutiny committee can add much to that fairly comprehensive resolution from Housing and Environment. I would imagine Mr. Beavers and others gets a bit confused about how many times he has to make his eloquent representations to committees of this council on the same matter, but notwithstanding that, can I just ask officer advice through you, Chair? Surely it makes sense, doesn't it, for us to say as a committee tonight, we note the resolution of Housing and Environment, we await the outcome of that. That isn't going to be too long, it's going to be in the middle of January, and then this committee can revisit this matter if it needs to after that time. I can't see the point of a protracted discussion on the same issues tonight by a different group of councillors coming, I would imagine, to broadly the same conclusions.
I would turn to other councillors and say, is that your wish and do you agree? In that case, all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Paul Beavers. Thank you, Mr. Beavers. Right. Excuse me while I get the relevant paper. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to stay, but we're having no more debate on that last subject, or you may go. Right, council tax support. You're introducing. You're going to introduce it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report is concerning proposals for the 2014-15 council tax support scheme. The council has to agree a scheme every year. There's already been a report to this committee back in July, and included in that was an identification of the options which were going to be consulted on. As set out in the report, basically there were 5 options which went out for consultation. One was basically to stay as we are at the moment for the scheme to be rolled over in a similar format to next year, with the one exception being second adult rebate, which I understand is a relatively minor area where only about, I think about £5,000 in benefits is paid out during the year. And the other four options, options 2 to 5, were all about claimants making a sliding scale of contributions towards the council tax. So it went from 15% minimum contribution up to 30% minimum contribution towards council tax. Under all the schemes there was protection for certain groups. Pensioners were protected, and that was a statutory protection. Then it was also proposed that there would be protection for disabled people, for carers, and also for those with children that were 5 and under. So that was the same across all the options that were consulted on. And that left about 2,777, precise figure there, of claimants, about 30% of claimants at the moment, that would potentially have been affected if we decided to change the scheme. The impact of the change in terms of the extra amount of money that those affected might have to pay, it was set out in Appendix 6 that option 1 would have no impact on those people, those unprotected people. Option 2 would result in them, as an average, paying about £135 extra per annum, and that increases on a sliding scale. For option 5 it goes up to £281 extra per annum. In terms of the consultation responses, there were 238 responses. The details set out in the report, but in summary, the responses that came from those that were currently receiving council tax support, 2/3 of those people favoured option 1, which was carrying on as we are at the moment, the same scheme. And of those people that were not on council tax support on benefits, about 80% of those favoured there being some sort of contribution towards council tax liabilities. But there was no clear steer from them or preference from them on options 2, 3, 4 or 5. Financially, there's tables in the report, but you'll see there's not a great deal of difference in cost to the council anyway of the different options. Option 5 is slightly cheaper. It would cost us about £5,000, about an extra £5,000 a year, and option 2 is the highest cost at about £36,000 a year. The recommendations of the report, first of all, that you note the consultation responses. Secondly, you note that the qualities impact assessment has been updated, and the detailed one is attached as an appendix to the report. If we could have your comments, please, as well on the 5 different options, and a recommendation from you, which would be your preferred option to take forward, and that will then, I think, help the portfolio holder in making a decision. And I think, if it's okay with the chair, I think the portfolio holder wanted to speak. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
Could I just make a plea for the cold air to be turned off? For those of us sitting underneath it, it's
Councillor Regis. Councillor Regis.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to be brief and just to assist you all in your debate tonight. I've taken on board the comments that were made by you all at the last EPP meeting a number of months ago. I'm aware of the consultation responses, and if it assists at the moment, I would be recommending a no change option, so keeping the status quo. So I thought that might assist you in your discussions tonight.
Councillor Potter, did you want to jump in with saying, should we just...
Well, is this my role tonight? I mean, thank you, Chair. I mean, somebody sent me along so you could all have an early night, so I'll do my best to... I mean, certainly I had a prepared script where I was going to pick out bits that made it obvious that option 1 was the one that I would seek to recommend, but with the portfolio holders' comments, I mean, I'd certainly like us to move straight away to a resolution that says we support option 1. Thank you, Chair.
Is that seconded? Agreed? Right. And there were some other recommendations on there, wasn't there? Just comments. Okay. That's all been agreed? Fine. Right. Review of fees and charges. I don't think this will go through so quick.
Right, just a few brief words. Again, as you'll be aware, the report is basically setting out proposals for fees and charges for next year, for 2014-15, but it also goes beyond that because we've had a thorough review this year of the fees and charges framework. We've had a members advisory panel, which has been chaired by Councillor Isaac, and I think Councillor Potter was one of the members of that panel. I don't think the others, Councillor Keating was on there. I'm trying to remember who the other members were, but I don't think Councillor Reid, not Councillor Mrs. Reid, not here tonight. Anyway, there was a members advisory panel which met on 3 occasions. They went through the existing fees and charges policy and framework, and the recommendations which were included here for amendments to that, I think I could say were widely supported by that map. There's also been an Auscom, or a couple of reports to Auscoms, particularly looking at fees and charges for car parking and also for outdoor sports. And the proposals which have come forward in the report here are following on from those principles that were set out in those Auscom reports, and I think there was a portfolio holder report as well on the fees and charges for car parking. The MAP meeting did identify there was a number of items of work that need to be carried on, and they're planning to meet again in January so that we can get an improvement in the information that we have on the amount of officer time that goes into some of the items for which we make charges, and there are also some other areas where we want to look at for next year to review some of the concessions that we give to make sure they're achieving the right objectives. The report sets out in Appendix 2 the detailed proposals of fees and charges for next year. Again, these were reported to the MAP, and they had the opportunity to talk to and challenge the officers that were coming forward with the recommendations, and some changes were made to the proposed charges as a result of that. And you've got attached as Appendix 4, it's quite lengthy I'm afraid, but the detailed working papers that were provided to support the proposals. And the report sets out the areas where there are significant changes, where they're proposed to go up by more than inflation, or where fees and charges are not proposed to increase at all. There's a separate section on car parking. You'll see in that there are a number of recommendations, in particular to do with short-term parking around the town centre and trying to support the council objective of trying to regenerate and get a bit more economic vitality into that area by offering free parking for up to half an hour in the short stay car parks there. Then there's reviews of other car parking charges with some increases in other areas. But I think that gives you the background. I'm sure you'll have some detailed questions for me.
Councillor Garner.
If you ask for a detailed question, you're not going to get it. I will declare an interest because I have an application in for work on a tree subject to a TPO. But in the list of charges, it would appear that TPOs, an application for work on trees subject to a TPO, are free of charge. That seems illogical, considering the amount of work that the officers have to do.
So, if it isn't included in here, it's not an area where we've identified for charge. I mean, we can take that point on board, and we can. So I think, yes, there may also be, I'm told, some areas that we can't charge by statute. I'm not sure if that might be one of them, but we could find out.
That's right, it's actually right.
Oh, you beat me to it, because I don't know the answer. I think it's probably the case, though, that it's laid down in statute that we can't charge. But we covered a lot of ground. when we looked at the charges. There are so many different scales of charges through the map, so there's further work to be done. So thank you for pointing that out. We'll have a look at it.
I'm just curious on the high hedges. That was 71.58 and has gone up to £300, but it just says high hedges. What sort of situation is that? It's not something obviously that comes up all that often, but it's going to make a big difference if it does.
I'm not sure quite what the definition of a high hedge is. These tend to be leylandii hedges, which are tall and overshadowing neighbours. Exactly what the limit is for it, it's treated under antisocial behaviour legislation, and the council is able to charge as a result of that. It's the actual implementation was carried out by planning enforcement officers, and usually, I'm told, I haven't talked to them today, they're able to resolve, or in the past they've always been able to resolve any applications which have come in by negotiation and sorting out with the applicants and the person with the offending hedge, so that it either gets reduced in size or lopped or removed.
If they weren't frightened before, when they see 300, they'd be frightened then.
The officer's got an answer on the tree.
Yeah, it is indeed the case, Chair, that by statute you're not allowed to charge for an application on works for a tree preservation order. The reason and the logic behind it is simply you don't have a say if someone puts a tree preservation order onto a tree in your property, so therefore you're not penalised by being charged for an application to do works on it.
Thank you. Okay. Did you want to comment down? Is that particularly over this last item? Yeah.
Yes. On high hedges, I think that the government, when they initially passed that legislation, recommended a fee level at the sort of level that we're charging now. So I think we were undercooking it before. And I've had personal experience as a ward councillor dealing with neighbours' disputes with hedges, and they involve an immense amount of time. Fortunately, there aren't too many of them that come to the council. I think we had about 10 in the last 12 months, so perhaps the neighbours sort them out without going to resorting to the legislation, which is quite complicated anyway.
Councillor Cherrett, now you're drinking your tea. No? Councillor James.
Good evening, Chair. Two questions on the fees and charges. The replacement grey bins, is that a large size bin and a small size bin? And if a resident wanted to use a small bin because they're recycling more and more, as we all want them to do, is there any way of offering a cheaper, smaller bin? That's the first.
I'm sorry, which number are we looking at here on page? Oh, there and here, sorry. I'm sorry, I don't know what the answer to this one is. I would have to get, if I could find out and let you know. I'm not sure under what circumstances we upgrade people. We used to upgrade people if they wanted a bigger bin for free. But if they damaged their bin, then there was a charge for replacing the damaged bin. But I'll have to check on exactly what that one is.
The other question actually wasn't from me. One of my children were reading this last night, and they want to know what happens to stray dogs after 7 days.
Again, would you like me to? I'll talk to the stray dogs person and find out for you.
We'll let you know. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite a simple one. I think it's it's in reference to page 64, 1117, which is talking of a 64% increase on temporary traffic orders. And I wanted just to be certain that this is only in respect of road closure. It's not going to have any impact on when contractors are carrying out work on the highway and have to divert pedestrian or traffic. I would like clarification on that point, that this is actually only a charge levied on complete road closure.
Chair, I could probably help with that one. The title of this is temporary traffic orders, so it is the temporary road traffic orders for temporary closures for resurfacing or works by the utilities. So this is a temporary traffic order, not the permanent closure of roads.
I'm looking around, there's nobody else burning with questions, is there, at the moment? Debate. Councillor Park.
Thank you, Chair. Well, on that very point that I've had clarification on, a concern that I do have is that if this may possibly cause contractors not to make an application, but try and actually just carry out the work without such a permission. We get situations here in the town centre highway where they have, as it were, had the stop-go, put in temporary traffic lights without proper and adequate diversion for pedestrians, and under the current circumstance where we have a ridiculous situation where a borough this size doesn't have highway officers located within the town, they're now located in Fleet, and by the time we've contacted a highway officer to respond, and they've responded, the work's completed and the contractors have packed up and gone away. So I think this sort of increase of 64%, I quite understand that we should be looking at relevant charges, but there's no indication here whether this is making it break even for the cost of the service, or it just says it will generate additional income of £20,000.
Yeah, we're in debate. This is more of a question, isn't it? Do you have...
I wasn't questioning, I was saying I'm actually think we shouldn't be considering such a high increase, and I gave my reasons. I didn't think I asked a question.
Okay. Any other questions? A debate, sorry, we're in debate. I'm getting right mixed up now, we are. We are in debate, yes. We are in debate, sorry. I made... Councillor James.
It's going to the car parking fees and charges, and I want to thank publicly the portfolio holder for meeting myself and Stuart to discuss some of the arrangements being put in place, and I think she's made some very sensible decisions, particularly around key worker parking and things like that, and I appreciate the time she gave to us and listening to us. But one thing that I have noticed, indeed, this half an hour free parking, which I think is an excellent idea in the short stay car parks, I'd ask whether it could be extended to Caston's car park. At the moment it's in the short stay, which is Caston's Yard car park. The Croston Road and that is Caston's car park, and it's only because one of the problems we have in an urban area is the school run has to go down streets that aren't suited to a school run. The car park is right there, and if people could park for sort of half an hour, 20 minutes, just drop off the kids and pick them up again, that would save an awful lot of traffic going through residential areas and make it a lot safer for children to walk to school if they can do, because cars aren't parked on the curbs and on the pavements. So I just make that request that Caston's car park is added to the half-hour free parking bit area.
Thank you. Councillor Foss.
I hesitate because I'm sure Councillor Isaac could do this far better than I, really, but the temporary traffic order issue that Councillor Parker's raised, I mean, we had in MAP some long discussion around this, I think, really, and the logic, I think, that we attached to this was that, you know, clearly the people that we're talking about here in terms of statutory undertakers and contractors should comply with the regulations, full stop. I mean, the amount of money that is involved in the order, my word would be irrelevant. I think really it's compliance with the requirements that they have for doing the work that they're going to be doing. What we did look at, and I think the paragraphs give some clue to it really, having a review of the time that is spent by officers in actually formulating the orders, the actual, as I say, time spent in that, the administration, and on a comparative basis, I have to say, with other local authorities, we were well below the curve, and it seemed to us that it was a situation of this local authority subsidising private contractors and statutory undertakers for something that, generally speaking, I think I'm entitled to say they could well afford to pay. And the logic was as straightforward as that, really. If they're not complying with the requirements that they have under law, then that's a different matter, and we need to make sure that they do, whether they're paying, you know, £460 or £280. It seems to me there's no excuse for them not complying with the traffic regulations that cover this. I hope that's a fair summary.
Councillor Chevet. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just briefly, having sat through a number of fees and charges reviews papers over the last few years, my thoughts on the work that's gone into getting to this point is really to sort of not just commend the input of officers, but also of the map, because so many times we've sat here in the past and have been presented with lengthy tables of numbers with plus or minus, which just gives you a fairly stark view of change. Actually, what we seem to have this year in the report is much more of a rich paper and commentary around actually how we've thought about the different elements of charges, how we've used broader tools like benchmarking, where we've actually done some analysis, and you know, taking Councillor Potter's point just then, where we are recognising that this council is picking up the burden of other organisations, and whilst that means that it puts a burden on us in terms of making sure they comply and then make appropriate payment for the disruption they cause to our highways and our residents, it is pleasing to see a report that actually enables you to have a considered review of the direction of travel of fees and charges, and I think that reflects quite well on the way that the map has worked, and certainly has helped me answer a lot of my questions before I've had to come to this committee tonight, which has been extremely helpful. So my one comment is to really thank everyone for their effort in producing a paper that's more legible and comprehensive than we've perhaps had in the past. Bring it on. Thank you.
I have got down at the end of the debate, I was going to thank the map panel, but I'll do it now on behalf of the others who weren't on it, to thank you for all the hard work you have done on it. When I remember in previous years, there's been an awful lot of questions that have been asked, and lots of bits and pieces, so yes, it's worked well.
Thank you, Chair, and I would just like to thank my colleague, Councillor Potter, for the explanation on behalf of the portfolio holder. But
I knew that was coming.
But that causes me then just to request to drill down just a little bit further, in as much as, so that I am clear on this particular point, are these traffic orders the ones that we get advised of as ward members from the legal department? I know it's a question, but it's actually to assist the debate.
Have somebody here who can answer that.
Councillor Parker, yes, you're exactly right. They're the ones that you're advised of as board member.
I have nobody else listed to speak. Carry on.
Is that better? The whole thing. I just wanted to echo the words of Councillor Cherris and in the spirit of goodwill that exists at the moment, temporarily, to record my appreciation for the good work done by the map. It was an example of where the councillors at Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council can work together. It was potentially a very contentious matter, and we approached it in a very sort of objective way. So I'm very pleased that we've got as far as we have got with this. There was one thing though in the report that I, as a portfolio holder, asked for views on, which just to remind you is about whether we should continue to offer free residence parking for visitors to residents who are 75 years and over. If you recall, the paper is actually saying from now on any age concession should be related to when a person reaches state pensionable age. So that would be a departure from that standard, if you like. But I would welcome the views of the committee on that particular issue.
I can't see anybody speaking against it, can I? So I would think that the answer is yes over that. Is that right? Over 75? Yeah. Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Councillor Parker, did you want to say something before?
Thank you, Chair. It was just in relation to page 61 of 194. This is paragraph 10.5, which is in relation to the shuttle bus, and I wanted just to seek, express a view that I do have concerns that I understand the work that's been going on to renegotiate the contract, and this is forward dating up to March 2014, but I would like to have thought that any change to the charging structure would have come back to a Ofcom committee before approval by the portfolio holder.
Got an officer who can answer that one too.
Sorry, I'm multitasking this evening. Councillor Parker, yes, we are currently in the middle of that procurement process. Indeed, the report says any changes will be subject to a separate portfolio holder report and decision, but exactly like the papers that we did for the approval of the tendering of the contract, that came through this committee. Certainly any change to the charges would also come through this committee and on to the portfolio holder.
Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, just before I get accused of being a member of the administration, I would want to make the point that Councillor Hussey made a particularly significant contribution to the work of MAP, as did others. And there are some difficulties, obviously, that we find when we're working as a members advisory panel. I mean, in terms of our, I hope, different politics in regard to these matters. But what struck me particularly, and I know Councillor Isaac's made some comment on this, I mean, this was probably the first time that we'd started to drill down, got a bit deeper, I think, in terms of the background of some of the fees and charges. I mean, we gave Philip a difficult few weeks, I think, and the colleague from the legal section in regard to further evidence I had to go away and get. And we did agree that some further work in the new year would be necessary, because I think consistent with the philosophy of saying that what we want to do is to make these services comprehensively available to the population of Basingstoke and not have rates of charges that disbar certain people from that. But on the other hand, I mean, for them to truly represent in most cases the cost that we actually experience as a local authority, there are some real sort of anomalies, I think, and contradictions around that probably do need some more work on, and I think that would be a useful couple of meetings for the MAP in the early part of 2014. I think that's agreed in principle, and I think we can probably, I say we if I'm still on it, but can refine this even further than it's been done so far.
Well, from the chair, I think it's a damn good idea. It certainly made it a lot easier this year than in previous years. So yes, if it needs another 2 meetings, then that's fine. If it needs to be reintroduced next year, we're all for it. But yes, Councillor Gunner.
Page 108 of 194. Garden waste charges. There's not a big increase on 2 sacks, but there's a big increase the additional sacks. But it is only £5 a year, so it's nothing to be too frightened about. But I would have thought we should actually be encouraging people to use the garden waste system. Therefore, for a future review, can we look at reducing the cost of an initial sack to get people into the system? Because once they're into it, then they will ask for additional sacks, and we should be able to recoup the cost that way. But I think because we want to get our recycling rates up, we should be doing what we can to encourage people to use the service.
I think that'd be an interesting view, and perhaps a map will look at that. I'll pass that over to the map. But yes. Okay. We've also got down on the notes to ask about, and I'm going to get this the wrong way round. Is it Caston's Yard? Caston's. Okay. Caston's Harbour. And with that, the recommendation is on 54 of 194. Sorry.
Sorry, Chairman, I just wanted to go back to the Green Garden Waste on 108, 194. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it says it is intended to continue this service for at least the next year. What does that mean? I hope this is going to continue for a lot longer than the next year.
I suppose one can only say this is for the next year, what we're asking for. And then next year it will be the same. Because we can't do it for 5 years' time, because we just don't know what's going to happen. They might not have weeds in those days. You didn't hear that? Right, agree the recommendation? Agreed? Thank you. Thank you. Paper D, and Dean, I think you're presenting it on.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. This is paper D on page 125 of 194. It's the proposed policy and budget framework. As you're probably aware, the framework consists of 2 elements, the council plan and the medium-term financial strategy. This year, there are no proposals to change the council plan, and therefore we're asking the members, we're consulting members largely on the medium-term financial strategy. So, there's a presentation up on the screen. If you'd like to follow that, if you can, I did send out some, or put out some handouts so you can have a look. So, what is the purpose of the medium-term financial strategy? Well, the strategy really is designed to support the council plan priorities, which are to be a low council tax authority, to make best use of the assets and resources, to attract external investment to regenerate, and to work with our partners to achieve improvements and efficiencies. It also aims to deliver a balanced budget over a 4-year period. It also looks to maintain the council's financial resilience in terms of its level of reserves and how it copes with the different risks associated on the finance side. It also helps to assist in service planning. If service managers know what it is, what budgets they have in the coming years, it aids with the planning. And it also looks to secure and maintain and develop our capital assets. So that's the property assets, and that's done through the asset management plan. The context, I think it is important when we're looking at setting a budget strategy that we look at the financial context And what we've done, and what we have done in the past, is look at and focus on the key areas. And these are the key areas in terms of risk, and they're also the key areas in terms of sensitivity. So whether a small movement, perhaps in interest rates, for example, will create a large financial impact on the council. So those are the key areas. I didn't intend to go through them all, but basically there's revenue support grant, so that's government funding, new homes bonus, which is also government funding, the business rates in terms of what we can actually retain of the business rates that we collect, and obviously then there's expenditure impacts, things like pay awards, inflation, and then there's the income. On the income side, there's things like the fees and charges, the interest income, and property rents. So the process this year, we followed effectively a two-stage process. The first process was to roll forward the existing services and policies and decisions that had already been made out for 4 years. We modelled a number of different scenarios using a range of different assumptions for those key areas that we looked at just a moment ago. And we effectively selected what we call a central case. And that is, for each of those key areas, what we believe to be the most likely outcome. That then gives us a sort of roll forward indicative forecast. So that's really for planning purposes. So that gives us a range of values and different sort of deficit forecasts for the next 4 years. From that was the first stage. The second stage then is cabinet proposal. So cabinet look at that what it's showing, whether we've got money or not, and then what needs to be done to address that. So they came forward with some cabinet proposals for some revenue priority areas, extra spend, and capital allocation proposals. But they also came forward with some savings and other proposals to try and offset those extra expenditure items. They're also looking at savings and income targets to bridge the deficits in future years. So that's the sort of first two stages, and we are now at the stage where we are looking to consult on the medium-term financial strategy and budget proposals, and then from here we'll work up the detailed estimates over November to January, and the final budget proposal will come forward to Council in February. So what are the proposals? The proposals are to freeze council tax for the next 2 years, 2014-15 and 15-16, to allocate £425,000 to revenue priorities, and those are detailed in Appendix C of the report, to identify or have identified savings and additional income of £346,000, which are also detailed in Appendix D of the medium-term financial strategy. There's also £1 million to be allocated to the Manydown Reserve, which will be coming from the Hampshire County Council receipt, where they'll be exercising their option to purchase half of the Manydown land. Then there's also £400,000 into a tree maintenance reserve to be spent over the next 4 years. They also looked at reducing the inflation allowance on supplies and services and external grants. We assumed an inflationary increase of about 2.25%, and they felt that if we could reduce that allowance and cut it back to 1%, that would actually create a saving. There was also some potential future savings, those that haven't actually been identified exactly what they are, of about 114,000 from 15-16 onwards. And then they also looked to set some income targets to look to achieve some additional income from 16-17 onwards of 250,000 a year. And that would primarily be coming from things like the interest income and the property rents and those types of things. There's one change to the financial policies, which is the next item. At the moment, we make a contribution to revenue reserves out of revenue to effectively fund future capital programmes. The intention now is not to continue to make that contribution. It's about 600,000 a year. But that does mean that in future the capital programme will be reliant on new capital receipts effectively to fund it in the future. There's also a proposal to allocate an additional 3.8 million to the capital programme. 2.1 million of that is the rolling programmes. There's 2 million to the local infrastructure fund, and I think there's a little bit for top of the town signage. So those are the proposals. That's just the maths, just to show that this where we were and where we are at the end, having introduced all those proposals. I'll skip over that, but that just shows the maths. Basically, before the proposals, we had a roll forward central case forecast showing a small surplus in 14-15 and increasing deficits thereafter. After the proposals, we now have a balanced budget for 14-15 and 15-16, and then deficits in 16-17 and 17-18. There's still work to be done. We still need to come up with a strategic approach to balancing those future years' budgets, and obviously we're working up the detailed estimates, which we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, some of which might address some of those deficits. And also going on in the background are two strategic reviews of two of our key income areas on cash investments and investment property. And both of those will help to, or need to deliver additional income to help with those future deficits. So in summary, the proposals for the budget strategy aim to achieve the main objectives of the medium-term financial strategy, which I set out in the first slide, by supporting the council plan, delivering a balanced budget, whilst dealing with the implications of the government's reduced expenditure plans. So that brings us to the recommendations. The recommendation is that the committee is recommended to note the medium-term financial strategy, including the budget proposals, and is asked to comment on those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I have questions from members, please? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. You've talked in the paper about efficiency savings over the next 2 years. If those efficiency savings were not implemented, what would the effect be on a typical Band D property?
We're working it out. The old-fashioned way, on pen and paper.
This is an approximation. The savings identified were 376,000. A Band D is roughly about £100, so that would be something of the order of £3 on a Band D, £3.40 if you want.
Mr. Potter?
I'm sure you'd be disappointed I didn't ask this question, as I always do, but in regard to 8.23, which is at page 135 of 194, the decision to allocate £1 million to the Manidown Reserve from the 3.6 million that the Hampshire County presumably still owe it. Is there any update as to when the Hampshire County Council intend to pay us this long overdue £3.6 million, or are they still awaiting the outcome of the consultation on the local plan?
I did ask the officer at Hampshire County Council exactly that question, and basically they are waiting to see what the response is to the consultation on the local plan. So I'll be reviewing their decision, I believe, in December. They have got budget to pay the money over, but they don't necessarily have to do that straight away. They carry the budget forward, so they should be making a decision in December, I understand.
It's not another question, Chair, but forgive me, just making an observation. Some of the timetables that I've seen projected in respect to the local plan, push this into 2015. So on that basis, we'll await our money from the county council as far forward as 2015.
Any other questions for the officer? Yes, Councillor James.
Throughout this report, it talks a lot about efficiency savings. Could you define efficiency savings in your view? What efficiency savings actually means?
I think a textbook answer to that would probably be that you're achieving the same amount for less. And that's the general definition that we try to use when we try and go through, identify we have savings. Sometimes they're going to be where we're procuring things cheaper, so we're getting the same service but at a lower cost. Other times it might be where we're able to deliver it effectively more efficiently, better use of IT or better working practices to deliver the same areas. But there is a list in the report, I think, of all the different efficiency savings, so that actually lists the different items out individually.
Councillor Potter.
Could I just ask a question under 5.43, which is 132 of 194? This is in regard to the new homes bonus grant. And in terms of the way the paragraph is worded, obviously requiring district councils to pass across 19% or 35% of the new homes bonus grant to the LEPs. In terms of that difference, the variation between 19 and 35, I'm not 100% clear how that is arrived at, what actually would be the impact on Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council. And secondly, and perhaps it isn't something you can necessarily comment on, I think I'm right in saying, aren't I, that the LEPs will be non-elected quangos accountable to nobody other than government appointment. That's right, isn't it?
I'll attempt to answer that. I know that the government is currently consulting on this 35%. I think that's likely to be the worst position for us. It may be that it's actually going to be lower than that, but we don't know at the moment. It would depend on what our level of new homes bonus is by the time we get to 2015-16. I'll probably tell you that. Yeah, we're looking at we're anticipating about 4.6 million as our annual grant in 2015-16 from new homes bonus. So the 35% would be 1.6 million of that. But as I say, it is an uncertain area because the government are consulting on it, and I think there's some indication that they may change their view on that. There's certainly been a lot of lobbying from some of the authorities, like the county councils and so on, who are potentially going to lose 100% of their funding.
Councillor Isaac, are you going to answer or add something to this?
Something to add. I think I'm right in saying that these figures are predicated on a worst case position of 35% going to the LEP. Correct? Right.
Thank you. I was interested in your definition of an efficiency saving. On page 169, reduction in grant budget available for sportsmen and women £1,000. How can that be deemed to be efficiency?
I would say it's not, to be honest. It's the column below, the title below was efficiencies, and which was 151,700, and we're showing that 1,000 as a grant reduction. So where we say 345,600 in the presentation, it was saying that's actually savings and additional income, of which 151,700 is efficiency, and another 110,000 is procurement.
If there's no more questions, we'll go over to debate. No debate? Councillor Potter.
Chair, I mean, I don't have a debate, but I mean, obviously, just to make a couple of comments, if you'll permit me, reading through the paper, I mean, politically, obviously, 1.3, it's been stated tonight, obviously, in our presentation, and no proposals to change policy direction or the council plan at this time. I wish there were, but as a member of the opposition, can do little about that. But we will obviously reserve our commentary on that for the budget debate in the new year. I think it is just worth bringing out, isn't it, under paragraph 5.1.2 under page 131 of 194, the massive reduction in revenue support grant that is going to apply to this council, nearly £1 million. And the implications of that are severe and will be on many local authorities because of the government's position on this. The other area that I just wanted to comment on briefly, if I might, and this is on page 135 of 194 under paragraph 8.2.1, and I know this is a cabinet proposal, of course, the allocation of 425,000 of new revenue funding in 2014-15. The allocation of nearly 50% of that to under the heading of marketing Basingstoke seems to me to be, putting it mildly, excessive when there are so many other priorities facing this council, one of which, for example, is listed in terms of housing and welfare advice and increased cost of bed and breakfast. Knowing what we are facing in the future, for nearly 50% of this 425,000 to be allocated to marketing, presumably the payment of consultants and the like, I think, quite frankly, is obscene.
Councillor Gardner.
Well, let's take up that point on marketing. That is very much an investment in the future. So I don't find it obscene in any way that we are looking to benefit the future of Basingstoke. However, I'd like to congratulate the officers for actually coming up with a budget that holds the council tax for the next 2 years. I think we've got some serious concerns beyond that, looking at the size of the shortfall. But thank you very much for what you've done.
Right, anything else? Councillor Sherrick.
Sorry, I thought you'd seen me earlier, that's why I was waiting. I think a couple of comments more than debate is that given what all local government is going through at the moment, and Councillor Potter mentioned the scale of the reduction in our support grant, the ability to sit here with a at least projected balanced budget for the next couple of years and have foresight of the scale of the challenge going forward is commendable, and the fact that we've been able to maintain both our priorities, our council plan and our budget position over the past 2 years, and as it seems now going forward, actually does contribute to some of the messages of the council in terms of consistency and steady state in turbulent times. Actually helps us to understand where we are, and perhaps undertake in the sort of joint working that we spoke of not that long ago in terms of the fees and charges map. Certainly being able to freeze council tax is a benefit for most residents, being able to ensure that we can see where that money's going, increase our transparency, but also bring a reality of charging what services cost is again another helpful position to be in, because there are more conversations about the future direction of this council, the future direction of our budget settlement or grant settlement, and therefore putting more onto us to see what we wish to do in terms of our priorities. So I for one welcome the fact that we're not changing our priorities dramatically, and we are taking a sensible and pragmatic view to plan ahead. I would make a comment on the revenue priority allocations at Appendix C, which is 166 of 194. And whilst it's easy to say that we shouldn't be spending money, and particularly large sums of money, is maybe marketing Basingstoke, if we don't, given that it's our place and we're proud of it, then I don't know that MD else will, or that MD would be able to do as good a job as us. We should seek support from even the non-elected quangos like the LEPs, because they actually get a slice of money as well, so we should align ourselves with them. And of course we are a founding member of the M3 LEP, so we can't just stand aside from it. We need to make sure though that the representative voice of Basingstoke through that body draws on all of the available funding, investment support and advice that is being ploughed in by central government at the moment to try and target areas for growth. We've been an area for growth in the past, we're positioned to be a growth area in the future, as well as the money that we commit and the effort and energy we commit to this. I want to make sure that we're actually tapped into other avenues of help, both through central and regional, well, like I say, not quite sure I can call a LEP a regional governance body, but yeah, get my meaning. More pleasing I see there is the money allocated to Basingstoke Festival, and I know again we've seen some impassioned pleas to protect that event, so I'm very pleased to see that we've got an allocation that enables us to continue with that event. We've already mentioned tree protection orders tonight, so seeing money in relation to an allocation to deal with a preventative problem, allocating £70,000 to trees and woodlands to enable us to take a much more proactive management view of our greenery and space, enables us to take money out at the start rather than waiting for things to become a problem. Again, you can only do that if you take a longer term view of managing our estate and managing our interaction with it. So whilst it's £70,000 allocated now over the next few years, then we need to, and further money over the next few years, it's a recognition of that, in my mind, is a view of efficiency, because we are spending to save either claims against us or even worse, damage or injury. Other items there which picked up on the one of the previous papers we spoke of this evening, being able to undertake a full leisure and recreation needs assessment so we can understand what's going on in this borough, help people get active, help people exploit the facilities we've got and across the borough in terms of sports and leisure, and try and make sure we get the right people using the right facilities, again is something I fully support. And then two other smaller allocations there, the meal support service, being able to understand where we can identify further need with people in their homes who are perhaps unable to get out and about, how we can identify and target support to them, working with our county council partners, and likewise increasing our allocation for housing and welfare advice, given that we are in a position of continuing poverty and the needs of vulnerable and homeless people. Even with an upturn in the economy, I think we're going to see the impact of the downturn hitting the residents of Basingstoke well into the future. So again, the fact that we've got some stability, some pragmatism, and recognising that we are nonetheless still facing an issue 2 years hence, does enable us to allocate some money to do not just some good work, but the right sort of things at a time when we're not yet out of the woods. Sorry about the pun from the trees and woodlands, but that's my general thought about the medium-term financial strategy, and I would commend it to this committee, and we'll have further debate, no doubt, in council.
Thank you, Councillor Regan.
Yeah, just going through all the detail, but just something that Councillor Gardner highlighted there. So the 2-year freeze on the council tax. So it's not so much what each council's done. I think that's central government legislation. If you put it back over in 1.9%, you have to have a referendum. But if you keep on freezing the basic council tax rate, we'll be sitting here racking up high charges because the money has to come from somewhere, especially if central government cuts to revenue as well. So I think there is a real worry in 2 years' time, but by then we'll have a Labour government anyway. So.
Councillor Mrs. Franco.
Yeah, it was just something that was said about the marketing Basingstoke. I mean, that's nearly $500,000, and I don't know if other people have noticed, but we've got licensed cabs going round absolutely covered, going all over Basingstoke, advertising the Oracle. So perhaps we ought to talk to the business partners and get Festival Place and other places to be done, and that won't cost the council anything.
Can I just say it's nearly $250,000, not $500,000, 200,000. Not for am I right? My apologies. Thank you. Sorry. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. There seems to be a theme for the night. It is this marketing of Basingstoke Borough. And I share my colleagues' concerns with regard to the amount that is being allocated, only on the basis that not so much that there should not be funding for the marketing of Basingstoke, and not that there shouldn't be good efforts to do that. It is just how that amount sits with regard to potential cuts in other mainline services that we may be planning or have to plan. The point I'd like to make is that it isn't just allocation of additional funds that markets the borough. We are already doing a lot of things very well. Our parks and our open spaces. We have people from other boroughs that visit them because of their reputation and because of the high standards. Green Park awards, our leisure park and the proposition it offers to people, and there are things that we are further planning with regard to improvements to the top of the town. All these things are happening and by themselves promote the town and promote the borough. With regard to the allocation of this sum of money, a thing that's always concerned me is, like everything else when you apply a budget, is how do you monitor and how do you measure the outcomes? And this is a difficult one. And I don't know that we are maybe paying sufficient attention in that regard. Where's the money? Those persons spending the money, what are they spending it on? And how are they being monitored and measured in relation to their success? And that would be something that I would perhaps suggest we start to look at in greater detail. The point that's picked up by Councillor Mrs. Frankham is something that's always niggled me slightly with regard to the adverts for the Oracle, but I think the answer is we don't want taxi cabs driving around Basingstoke with the Festival Place. We want to get them in Reading advertising Festival Place.
I've got no other speakers, so we're being asked to comment on the medium-term financial strategy and the budget proposals. Okay? Agreed? And the last bit is the performance panel, I believe. And that's to note. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Boringly, I think probably I seem to be maybe the only member of the committee that tries to find a question in relation to this particular paper rather than just going straight through noted. I'd like to ask on page 191 in relation to the Alicon Link highway improvements, there's a action for LM to obtain an update from Barry Ford and circulate via email. I've mentioned this point before, but can I specifically certainly ask in this aspect, can that email come also to this committee members, not just to the working group?
I agree. Yes, Councillor.
And one further point, on the same page, there's reference made to JE and SR joining the meeting. And I understand the desire to have the initials throughout the paper, but I don't know who JE and SR are, and to sort of start to try and understand their participation in the meeting, perhaps we can know who who JE and SR are.
I know who JR is. Okay. Sarah Robinson is SR, and but nobody knows who JR is. But we will get it and we will circulate it. Yes, Councillor Parker.
Can I then just make the point then that at the beginning of the meeting where it says present, the clarification of those joining the meeting were also made at that point.
It will be so amended. Anything else, councillors? Thank you all very much for a shortish meeting and one that I've enjoyed. Thank you.